Welcome to the Morning Report, a production of fightbackmedia.com, the #1 source of urban conservative information in America.
Good morning and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. Again, the Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. Wow. This is more of the post-election afterglow. But there are some things to talk about, in the fog of war, the vanquished is disoriented. They can't get their bearings. They can't get up on their feet. And when that is happening, this is the time to strike. This is the time where you make gains, where you solidify your position. And it seems like that's exactly what's happening. Exactly what's happening. It is interesting that the Trump cabinet is being put together, and it's being put together like a fantasy football team, almost like a fantasy politics team. For instance, my favorite move is the new DOGE. The Dodge, really? I thought that was hysterical. The Department of Governmental Efficiency, being headed by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Are you kidding me? Wow. Well, these things are happening. So much talk in the campaign about the inefficiency of government is starting to happen. So again, during the 2024 election, President-elect Donald Trump had the enthusiastic support from Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. The latter, who had once been a primary opponent. I remember, right? So after Musk's frequent references to being involved in a department to do with government efficiency, which, Kurt Schlichter talked about at town hall, the Trump Vance transition team made it official with a statement. So according to the statement, Musk, in conjunction with his American Patriot PAC and Ramaswamy, will lead the Department of Governmental Efficiency. The statement also included a quote from Musk himself, who declared that this will send shockwaves through the system and anyone involved in government waste, which is a lot of people. Here's the statement. I am pleased to announce that the great Elon Musk, working in conjunction with the American Patriot Vivek Ramaswamy, will lead the Department of Government Efficiency. Together, these two wonderful Americans will pave the way for my administration to dismantle government bureaucracy and slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies essential to Save America, to the Save America movement. This will send shockwaves through the system and anyone involved in government waste, which is a lot of people, stated Elon Musk. It will become potentially the Manhattan Project of our time. Republican politicians have dreamed about the objective of Doge, for a long time. To drive this kind of drastic change, the Department of Governmental Efficiency will provide advice and guidance from outside of government, and will partner with the White House and the Office of Management and Budget to drive large-scale structural reform and create an entrepreneurial approach to government never seen before. I look forward to Elon and Vivek making changes to the federal bureaucracy with an eye on efficiency, and at the same time making life better for all Americans. Importantly, we will drive out the massive waste and fraud which exists throughout our annual $6.5 trillion of government spending. They will work together to liberate our economy and make the U.S. government accountable to we, the people. Their work will conclude no later than July 4th, 2026. A smaller government with more efficiency and less bureaucracy will be the perfect gift to America on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. I am confident they will succeed. Now, what I like about this statement is that it gives a deadline, because you can't just have these things just sort of going on and on. The deadline is July 4th, 2026. That's when their work will conclude. And hopefully, we'll be able to see the difference. Now, the left is going to lose their ever-loving mind. Absolutely lose. I have always been wait and see kind of person. I think it's a great idea. I mean, anyone who believes that the government, especially at the federal level, is not bloated and inefficient and wasteful, I don't believe that you believe that. I believe that you believe that the government is bloated and wasteful and inefficient. Now, you may have a special place in your heart for the people who are in public service, who do the everyday work, who get their hands dirty, who, jump in the ditches and all that stuff. And I understand that. But federal government is bloated, wasteful, and inefficient. And the only reason they survive is because they have an endless supply of money and they do not have to make a profit. They don't have to make a profit to pay their bills. They don't have to make a profit to pay their employees. They don't have to make a profit to make sure they get a new equipment. They don't have to make a profit. And they're accountable to no one. Initiatives can fail on a massive scale, and no one's held accountable. Maybe that'll stop. And moving in that direction is a good idea. It's a good idea. Now, as we know, Musk was a frequent guest for the Trump Vance rallies, especially in the final weeks of the campaign, appearing in places such as Butler, Pennsylvania, as well as Trump's October 27th rally in Madison Square Garden. Ramaswamy shared the statement on his X account, also noting, "We will not go quietly," complete with a tag of Musk and the American flag. We will not go quietly. The idea is they're going to make things happen, and this is starting to happen. The headline on Town Hall was, "It's happening! It's happening!" Hope so. Later in the evening, Ramaswamy also posted that such a role means he's removing his name from consideration to replace Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, who currently serves as a U.S. Senator representing Ohio, elected in 22. And yes, he says, this is what Ramaswamy says, "Yes, it means I'm withdrawing myself from consideration for the pending state appointment in Ohio. Whoever Governor DeWine appoints to JD's seat has some big shoes to fill, and I will help them however I can." Ramaswamy posted, still signaling a willingness to help. So yes, Ramaswamy had a chance to be a senator, and has decided that this is a better role for him, and I'm probably guessing that it will be. If they are minimally effective, it's going to be a boon for the nation. Think about it, a budget of $6.5 trillion. You got to tell me, there's got to be some waste there, right? There's got to be some waste there. All right, we're going to do a little break. We'll be back right after this message.
Some other guy with the night in. What you gonna do about it?
All right, we're back. Thanks. We're talking about Trump built and Trump advanced building this fantasy political team, and it's continuing. In the Senate, it looks like that Rick Scott, senator from Florida, has a really good chance of being be in charge. I can speak in charge of the Senate, the majority leader in the Senate. Rick Scott has always been on the Trump train. He is interested in moving the Trump agenda forward in the Senate, where the other two Republicans aren't as much, like John Cornyn. God, not John Cornyn, please. So this is going to be very interesting if this happens. It won't just be that the Republicans have an advantage in the Senate, because they do. But when you have a majority leader that is down with the agenda, down with the cause, so to speak, it's going to make it a lot easier for Trump to move legislation through the Senate and the House. And it looks like now that Republicans will have an advantage in the House. So this is one of the things I talked about in my video that I did a few days ago. It looks like, hopefully, that Republicans are finally going to take advantage of their win and act like it, putting pieces in place. The ambassador to Israel is going to be a Baptist preacher. What? The ambassador to Israel is going to be a Baptist preacher and a pretty doggone good bass player, Mike Huckabee. Are you kidding me? All the people, and a lot of the people in this time around and the last time around in 2016 that Trump ran against, starting to bring them in, bring in the Mike Huckabees, bring in the Marco Rubios. Oh yeah, did you hear? Trump has pegged Marco Rubio to be Secretary of State. Marco, my man. I'm a big fan of Marco Rubio. I told y'all in 2016 there are 3 votes for Republicans in this House where I live, and 2 of them were for Marco Rubio, and the other one was for Ted Cruz. Yeah, that was in the primary. As it turned out, in the general election, everybody here voted for Donald Trump in the general election 2016. Everybody voted for Donald Trump in the primaries in 2024 and in 2020 and in the general election in 2020 and 2024. So we weren't on the Trump train to start with, but we ended up there. Everybody in my house ended up there. And right now, on my block, I'm pretty confident that we're the only 3 Republicans on the entire block. But my precinct, Trump did better in my precinct than he did in 2020 and 2016. So things are changing. So they're putting the team together. You also heard that Judge Merchan is deciding whether to toss Trump's case in New York, because the Trump team said, hey, listen, holding these charges against the sitting president is probably not the best idea, right? Not. So all that's probably going to go away. All going to go away. It's happening. It's happening. What do you think about it? Write it in the comments. I'm going to take one more little break, and we'll be back with something that I think you ought to think about. Something that I've already thought about. And it may sound absolutely insane. So hang on. We'll be right back. I don't know if a lot of you are old enough to remember what a hanging Chad is. Well, a little bit ago, we had an election here in Florida in Palm Beach County. What we used to have is, and I wish I had one. We used to have these computer punch cards, and you would take the computer punch card and you would stick it into your ballot, and on each side it had the printed names. And what you would do, you would take this little poker and you would punch next to the name of the person that you are thinking what you're voting for. Now, sometimes people didn't punch all the way through. So they would take those computer punch cards and they would run them to the machines, kind of how computer programming was done back in the 70s. You get this whole list of punch cards now with your program, and you would try like hell to make sure that you wouldn't drop them and spread your program all over the kitchen floor. And you would put them in these card readers, and they would read, because of the punches, they would read your program in the computer. So if you ain't 50, you don't remember any of that stuff. You've never heard of it, and it's weird. But anyway, that's how they used to count votes in Florida anyway. But it was problematical because if someone didn't punch all the way through, the piece of paper would still be hanging on, and maybe the vote wasn't read properly by the machine. And those little things that hung off were called chads, CHADS, chads. So we had some hanging chads that became part of the lexicon in the state of Florida, and caused a huge problem with Bush v. Gore. Some of you will remember it. So after that, Florida got it together. I think we spent a cycle using touch screens until someone said, we need a paper trail. And now we have a piece of paper that we circle in the little dots. We take that piece of paper and we run that piece of paper into a machine that reads it, and it keeps the paper. So we can always look at the piece of paper to make sure that people's intentions are clear before reading it right back into the machine. So I want you guys to know how we do it. Because consider the following right now. Every plausible scenario, it's been a full week after the election, and it turns out that the electorate has been just a little bit bluer than it was this year. Not blue, mind you, just a notch bluer in a handful of places. Let's say Kamala Harris had performed a few points better in Pennsylvania and Michigan, carrying both. And Trump had narrowly held on to Wisconsin. Let's also say that North Carolina and Georgia had swiveled right, as they did, with everything else staying exactly the same. Out west, Arizona and Nevada are significantly closer, with outcomes still to be determined. Trump would have collected 261 electoral votes by this point, 9 short of clinching the presidency. Harris would be sitting on 260. Both would want to take Nevada, of course, but the only real prize would be Arizona's 11 electoral votes, the winner of which would become the president. And under the same hypothetical, let's stipulate that Arizona would be on track for a 2020 level photo finish. For reference, Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump by 0.3 of a point last cycle, with a margin of over just 10,000 votes out of more than 3 million casts. In such a situation, every ballot dump and count update arriving at frustratingly irregular intervals would be scrutinized heavily. Conspiracies and allegations would bloom. With everything on the line, the weight of the world would come down upon a handful of state level officials, with frantic, high-stakes litigation drawing out and dragging out the process. The eventual losers would cling to any number of adverse abnormalities and judicial decisions as they reasoned why they didn't really lose a legitimate election. The process would not take days, but quite possibly weeks, and destabilizing circuits that would undermine an already low public trust in the institution. If this sounds remotely far-fetched, you may have slept through the post-election environment 4 years ago. And you've certainly forgotten the 2000 Florida debacle that I already talked about. Because 24 years ago, the outcome of a presidential election came down to our Sunshine State spawning a chaotic, messy process that dragged into December. Democrat Al Gore didn't concede until December 13th, following weeks of legal wrangling, competing court rulings, and public protests. George Bush won fair and square. George Bush won fair and square. Would have won by more votes under a full statewide recount, and was almost certainly harmed by the news networks wrongly calling the state for Gore while voting was still underway. And in most conservative parts, the conservative part of the state, that's in the Panhandle. But many Democrats never accepted the loss, and their toxic election denialism lingered for years. After the nightmare of hanging chads, butterfly ballots, and other absurd foibles, Florida's governor, the victor's brother, Jed, set out to ensure that such an embarrassingly spectacle would never play out in his state again. He undertook fact-finding missions to gather, study, and implement as many best practices on election logistics as possible. The result was, in 2001, an overhaul that set Florida on a path, including various updates, fine-tuning over the years, the ones that I mentioned. So 5 months after the 2000 election, at the urging of Jeb Bush, the state legislature enacted a sweeping overhaul of Florida's election rules. The Election Reform Act of 2001 banned the use of punch card voting machines and required the Secretary of State, rather than accounting level election officials, to have the final say over which kind of voting machines can be used in the future. The law also clarified Florida's rules for automatic recounts and set more stringent time frames for the certification of vote counts, a move that intended to prevent the seemingly indeterminable recounts in the year 2000. It also created a new statewide rules for issuing a provisional ballots and how those will be counted, with an eye towards ensuring that as many Floridians as possible could vote. Well, Florida is famous amongst election nerds for having the fastest reporting. Now, we're famous now for having the fastest reporting vote totals in the country, with a near instant results on election night, says Andy Craig, the director of election policy at the Rainey Center, a centrist think tank. In a report that he authored earlier this year, Craig calls Florida vote processing procedures the gold standard for other states to follow. Per state law, counties can begin processing their mailed-in ballots up to 25 days before Election Day. That includes just about everything except the actual counting, checking that the signatures are valid and the votes have been legally submitted. Counting these ballots officially begins 15 days before Election Day and must be completed by the time the polls close. Leaking the results early, a legitimate fear, as it could influence the decision of voters get to cast ballots, is a felony offense. And there has never been a leak. The process buys valuable time to get things right. So again, in Florida, close to 11 million votes were tabulated accurately, reliably, and quickly last week, just as we saw 4 years ago. Floridians have robust early voting options at their disposal, backed up by various integrity securing safeguards and ballots that are processed as they come in. And as soon as the polls close, a huge batch of already tabulated ballots are reported. So how it happens in Florida is this. So on election day at 7 o'clock, at 7:01, when the polls close, you get this flush of results. It just happens right away. Polls close at 7:02, votes. Those are the early votes, and those are the mail-in ballots or the absentee ballots, because they're already counted. So by 7:45, in most places, the rest of the ballots are counted, but certainly by 8 o'clock. So even when results are much closer than we've seen over the past two cycles, each of which resulted in GOP blowouts, races are able to be called in a timely manner, almost always on the night of the election. This lends credibility to the process and inspires confidence about the results being fair and legitimate, even to the losing side. There is absolutely no reason why other states cannot adopt the Florida model. They should. And this is not at all a partisan statement. Several of my Democrat friends concede that Florida simply has a sound, replicable system. So I don't believe the federal government should necessarily dictate to states how they administer their election. I don't think that's a good idea at all. But voters of all stripes should demand better, and then this insane, embarrassing, confidence-crushing systems we see in slow counting states like Arizona, Nevada, and California. It's ridiculous. We should just do it like Florida does. What do you think? What do you think? Write it in the comments. In any case, it's been a show. We got to get out of here. We've gone long. We got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. And so until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, I'll take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.